started. Okay, welcome, friends and neighbors. Hi there.
Hi.
Hello, we are Christopher and my lovely assistant wife,
Angela.
Angela. Hi. So today we're going to be doing quail, introduction to quail, answering your questions. If you have questions about them and you're here, if you're watching live, leave a question in the comments. If not, leave one later. We'll get back to it. We always do. Anything you'd like to suggest or add before we start yapping?
Only that we are the dinosaur omelet. That's who we are.
Yeah.
But no, I don't have anything.
Yeah, all right, cool, guys. Yeah, a little quick thing about us. We're a small hatchery in southern Lancaster County in Pennsylvania. And our primary focus was, and probably still is, the jumbo Coturnix quail, which we're going to be talking about tonight. Okay?
Yeah, as far as being sufficient and productive with producing eggs and meat, a meat program to fill your freezer, they are just awesome birds for that.
Yeah, so I'm going to go over a little bit. We'll talk about the birds raising and the animal husbandry, and then a little bit about the business side. People raise these things to sell them if you guys are looking to raise birds to sell. The quail sell quick. People want them. Right now, as we're recording this, it's the end of summer, so the kids are going back to school. So it's a seasonal thing right now, so people are busy with that like anything else. Like Christmas time and holiday seasons. Things are slower everywhere. People are busy. But yeah, we're still moving quail, and we're still teaching about the quail, and they're pretty awesome. I use them all the time. I eat their eggs. We're very healthy people, so the eggs are extremely healthy and good for you.
Yeah, we like to, they're very good eating for breakfast, fried eggs, but we also like to do the hard-boiled eggs in salads, and they're really yummy snacks.
Yeah, man.
And packed full of protein and all sorts of vitamins.
Yeah, so that's us. If you have any questions about that, give us a shout. We're on the Facebook. You can always stop in there. We put a lot of stuff on there. I think that's our primary vehicle for outreach in marketing is Facebook. But we're doing these YouTubes to help you guys out. Like the goal of these is to give information and to help people who are intimidated or questioning. They don't know. Well, I don't know. This seems like something I might be interested in, but how do I do that? It's nothing to be afraid of. Okay, so ask questions. People like us can answer the questions. I talk too much. I'm the one who talks too much.
He's definitely the extrovert, although I don't mind talking.
She's a good talker. She's smart. Blah, blah. All right, man. So let's roll in. We're going to talk about raising the critters, what we're going to need from beginning to end. And you can, if you have to leave, you can leave. She might have to leave because we have animals. From beginning to end. And also, like I said, if you're doing small business or if you have kids, man, this is a great small business for your kids to do because it's something they can raise their eggs and they're small and easy to take care of animals. All right, cool. So jumbo quail. Let's talk about the jumbo quail.
Yeah, and as far as skill level goes, pretty much anyone, you could have zero experience with animals and have never had pets, and these guys are easy to get started with. Or you could be somebody who has tons of experience, maybe even has a farm and all kinds of animals, and then these guys are just a simple and easy inclusion to add something to add to what you're doing for extra productivity. For food.
Oh yeah.
So any
they produce a ton of food, a ton of eggs. Oh, where the hell are the eggs? I'll show you the eggs. Let me show them the eggs. So here's quail eggs. I always have some kind of prop. Yes, they're smaller than chicken eggs. It's 3 to 1. 3 quail eggs is equivalent to about 1 large chicken egg. You go on the internet and you're going to have everybody give you different versions of answers. So I'll give you the actual real answer. A large chicken egg weighs about 62 grams or so. Okay, whereas a quail egg, a jumbo Coturnix quail egg, if you're raising them properly, what are they, 14 to 20 grams?
Yeah, I would say low would be 14 grams, and then probably generally up to 18, but there's bigger ones than that.
Yeah, so 3 or 4 eggs or so for 1 large, big old chicken egg. But on the plus side, again, like if you're conscientious about your health, they have a higher nutrient density because the yolk to white ratio is greater. So there's, if you take 100 ounces or pounds or whatever, 100 grams of scrambled chicken egg and 100 grams of scrambled quail egg. There'll be more nutrients in the scrambled quail egg because they have a higher yolk to white ratio. Does that make sense? I hope I sound like Dr. Science. Oh, these came out here. Okay.
And also these are jumbo quail. Some confusion may come with some people might not have jumbo quail, so there's standard size quail, which are about half the size, and so then their eggs are like half the size.
Tiny. Yeah.
And then a lot of people like button quail, and so their eggs are super tiny. But these guys have nice big eggs, and they also produce the most eggs for their variety of type of quail.
Speaking of that, so I'm going to get into this whole lesson with you guys. Introduction to jumbo quail. So we talked about their eggs. I just want to show you that to give you something to see. So where the quail come from? Asia and North America. You have Asian quail and North American quail indigenously. So the ones that live here in the U.S. are like the bob whites. There's some mountain quail. What else live up here? I took a whole bunch of good notes on this. What they call California quail. Mm-hmm. Those are indigenous. So they're native. So there's more restrictions on particularly the bob white. Okay. I don't want to get into much about that right now. But you have these North American quail and you have Asian quail, and there is a particular variety of Asian quail that we're talking about tonight, which is the very popular meat breed, the Japonica coturnix, I guess is the Latin name, or is that right? Yeah, Coturnix japonica, which is the jumbo coturnix quail. All right, little brown game bird, about as big as a grapefruit, lays over 300 eggs per year. And it's
per hen. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that is the popular tip-top bird for quail-wise anyway, for food production. Okay, so if you're looking for food production, which is 2023 United States, okay, your money doesn't go far anymore. So people are trying to raise their own food. Plus, man, if you know about like what, health and quality, you want to raise and eat as much of your own food or food that just came from a local source as opposed to that toxic garbage that is 99% of a grocery store.
And what are a few examples as to why that is? Why it's not good food in the grocery store? Because a lot of these animals are...
Oh, well, if you're talking about the animal products,
they're in, they're cramped in these tiny houses, tiny spaces within a giant building. They aren't getting top quality feed. They're being exposed to antibiotics, which that goes into their meat or whatever they're producing.
You guys have heard. I'm sure they've heard of the terrible antibiotic stories, right?
Yeah, and so if you're raising your own meat, whatever type of animal that is, you know what's going into that animal. You have control.
Bear in mind too, you're a product of what you eat, and what you eat is a product of what they eat, and the animals are being fed, less than most desirable foodstuffs. Yeah. So the quality of their meat and their eggs is going to be less than desirable.
Yeah.
You may want to say it's negligible, but I would never eat a store egg again.
The flavor is definitely different. Store-bought foods, meats and eggs, it's definitely, the flavor is less compared to growing healthy,
Yeah, I'm not trying to gripe about it. You guys, most everybody has the education now. Like, people are aware, like, the quality difference in the farm-raised foods. But, just be aware of that. Especially, when you're starting your food program, it's going to be a motivation for you.
Yeah.
So the jumbo quail coming from Asia, it was domesticated. It's raised all over Asia and Europe. Okay, it's just gaining popularity in the U.S. now because of that shutdowns and the virus and all that fun stuff. People started doing new things, so they started learning. And yeah, man, raising these quails have been experiencing great success with a lot of people with their home food production. Okay, so that's the basic intro to the jumbo quail. I always take notes for you guys so we can get this fluid. Next, so we have the idea of getting quail. I want to raise quail for my family. I want to produce, half a dozen eggs, chicken eggs equivalent a day. Okay, let's say I just want to produce the equivalency of about 6 chicken eggs a day. So... because simple math, did quail math video a week or so ago. Because 3 quail eggs equal 1 chicken egg, and I want to replace 6 chicken eggs, right? 6 times 3, 18. So 18 quail eggs will replace 6 chicken eggs. And if a hen lays 1 egg a day,
roughly
18 quail. So just around that number, 15 to 20 quail will probably satisfy your needs, you know, depending on how much you're eating. So we've decided we're going to get quail, raise them for the kids, and have healthy eggs. So we're going to get 18 to 20 quail. Where do I keep them? All right, you keep them in a hutch, okay? Not a big run, not a big coop. You want to keep them in an enclosure. Why do we keep them in an enclosure?
Well, we like to focus on being as efficient as possible and having them in an enclosure, in particular a hutch, but an enclosure, because there's aviary type styles, is the point is to protect them from predators. They're easy prey, so you want to protect them as much as possible. If you have them in a hutch, that's pretty simple to do. You just make sure there are no holes that are larger or that are 1 inch or larger.
Rat-sized.
Rats
will get in.
and
Weasels
and snakes, they can go through a quarter, the size of a quarter, and raccoons can stick their little hands in and grab and pull and cause damage.
Yeah, that's a big problem for you guys, particularly if you're new with livestock and you're raising animals, chickens, whatever, ducks or quail, and you're not experienced with them yet. Predators, they'll eat your critters, okay? You got a nice chicken hutch, if there's little holes in it, you know, rats will squeeze in there and eat chicks or eat legs or eat eggs or eat the whole big full-grown animal.
Do that to
like a rat will kill, So predator proofing. So housing, I got my 18 quails. We have a ton of information about all of the stuff we're discussing here today on the Facebook and in the links in this video. At the bottom, there are links to the documents, or what do you call it? The information that we created. Easy to read stuff. That'll tell you all this stuff. Yeah, so housing, these quail, they're easy to keep, okay? Small container. What's the square footage per quails?
So it'd be three quail per square foot. Yeah, that's what we like to
at a max for us. Comfortable.
Yeah, if sometimes people have a lot more space in the hutch, and sometimes it's okay. You can get away with that sometimes, but other times there might be territorial issues amongst the birds. So
with too much space.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just there's things that you can do to mitigate that.
Yeah, so we have our housing. It needs 3 quail per square foot, and I want 18 quail or so. I know, it's a little math, simple math. 18 divided by 3, backwards, is 6. 6 square feet. 6 square feet is all that's needed, really, for those 18 quail. You may want to make it a little bigger, but something 2 feet by 3 feet, you know, it's just, the reason I'm telling you this is so you guys know it's a small structure. Am I hitting you in the face?
Oh, you're okay.
It's a small structure to produce a lot of output. Okay.
Yeah.
Things you need to know about the housing, and I'm going to go over a few things about housing, feeding, breeding, and all this good stuff. But I want to go over the housing. It's very important. Housing is very important because, like she said, with predators, they're going to kill the birds if you're not careful, and you know you want to be able to clean it and collect eggs. So what do we need to know? Basic stuff. Predator proofing the cage is pretty simple. The quail need ventilation, so you want air, but you also want to have it predator proofed. So you're not nailing boards all around the thing because there's no circulation, there's no air. They're going to suffocate or they're going to overheat. What we do and what recommend and what a lot of people do for their cages is the majority of it is going to be in a hardware cloth, or it's
specifically
half-inch hardware cloth, which is like a wire mesh. It allows, the air to breathe through, plenty of ventilation, and it'll allow them to, you can get their droppings on a pan underneath. It'll pass through that half-inch hardware cloth. Okay, so you want to have a clean, easy to clean cage. So we're wrapping this thing in hardware cloth. Predators aren't getting in there, all right? You can clean it out because you're going to be able to go to the bathroom through this cloth, this hardware cloth, which is wire mesh.
Important because you want to make sure their health is kept up, and if anything living is exposed for a period of time to manure or decaying material, then you run the risk of disease. Yes, you want to keep them healthy. And then also a note on the size of the wire, particularly the bottom. You don't want to use anything smaller than 1/2 inch because there's 1/4 inch hardware cloth. Otherwise, the drop-ins won't pass through. So
you're going to have to tear the whole floor out.
that'll be really frustrating. So yeah, make sure it's the right size.
If you're using 1/4 inch hardware cloth, you may as well just put in a flat floor. Actually, it'd be better to put a flat floor in because it'd be easier to scoop.
Yeah.
Because the smaller hardware cloth will clog. 1/2 inch is fine. All right, so ventilation, very important. In the building and constructing of my hutches, I don't keep the whole thing exposed. I do have a portion of it, maybe 1/3 or even 1/2, which will have the front, the back, and the side covered. Oh, and the bottom, but the top is still going to have that hardware cloth for full ventilation. And what about the roof? Tell them about the roof with the hardware cloth.
Yeah, so it's
top of the hutch.
If they're in a hutch type of caging, then it's important to make sure the roof, the ceiling, is 2 feet or less. So I would say, ideally, some people pack it in smaller, and they'll do like maybe an 8-inch high ceiling, but we encourage 12 inches to 24 inches.
Yeah.
You don't want it to be any higher in that type because they do hop up, they'll jump up, and they can injure their necks or their heads.
They'll hit the hard roof and break their neck, so you want to have something with give.
Yeah, so you want it to be, it'll move, it'll help. But yeah, that's the main thing.
That's the main thing. Just make sure, when they jump up, because they spook easy. Your quail, they're going to be successful. You guys will do well with them, but they spook easy. And when they jump, they're going to hit the ceiling in their little hutch. You don't want to have a hard surface, like she said, because it could hurt their neck or kill them. So with the hardware cloth, which is wire mesh, right? It's going to have a little give, and they go up, and it's going to have give when they hit it. They're not jumping all the time, but they do get startled, and they will jump, and they can get injured that way. All right. So the housing it's very important, and it'll cut out a lot of headache if you do it properly the first time. So do a little research. I have a video on here. I walk through a hutch. There's plenty of other videos online about hutch construction. But yeah, man, the quail they're very inexpensive to start out with compared to chicken. You don't need a lot of space. I mean, that's the huge draw of these things. They're cheap and they don't take up any space. And they're pretty much idiot proof. I always refer to them like goldfish with feathers because you just keep them in a cage, feed them, and clean them, and you're good. Right? Yeah. Okay, so the housing is pretty straightforward. The only other thing is you're going to want to collect eggs, and you may want to decide to have what's called an egg rollout. Let's say your kids are doing this, and it's their project, and they want to collect eggs. You don't want them reaching in and out all the time, spooking birds or cracking eggs or whatever. So an egg rollout is basically the floor, instead of being level, it's going to be tilted. So the things just roll down. When they lay an egg, it just rolls out into the front of the cage, and this goes out to the front of the cage, where you don't even have to open the cage. You can just pick up your eggs and collect them. So a rollout floor for your eggs is important. It's not necessary, but it makes it easier, and it prohibits a lot of eggs cracking or being damaged.
Yeah, because they tend to kick them around.
Yeah, little footballs.
They lay them around in different areas. They don't just put them in like a little one corner. So.
Cool. Yeah. All right, moving on. I'm going to talk about feeding and the nutrition of these critters. So we decided how many birds we're getting. We know we're keeping them in the hutch. We built their hutch, or we have an idea of what the hutch is going to be. So what do we feed them? What do we feed them? It depends. So before they're 8 weeks of age, you're going to feed them a grower?
Yeah, you want a higher protein game bird feed to support the rapid growth and development.
Well, why is it game bird feed, and what is this about? Or broiler feed, like all these different names they have for it, right?
Yeah, it's generally...
High in what?
The protein. Yep, high protein.
Yeah, yeah, it's high in protein. They're growing, so they want to have, right, the amino acids and the proteins for them too.
Their nutrition needs to support their growth and development,
Tell them about the metabolism, how quick they are.
Yeah, so they don't overeat like chickens. Chickens, they'll eat. They if they are able to, they'll eat a lot. But quail, they feed like throughout the day, and kind of often they'll visit the feeder back and forth from chicks their whole life, and they have faster metabolisms. So they do need to have food and water available at all times. If they are ever without food for a period of time, that can actually pretty quickly start to affect their body weight. Their body will start.
Yeah.
What is it? It just starts.
It's going to adapt to the lack of food pretty quick, or going to I forget what the term is.
Yeah, it's fine.
They're not. I forget. It's a bio term. They're not going to grow at the rate that they're growing.
But
the fast rate.
It will affect their health, their current health. If they're not able to continue eating, because of the fast metabolism, they can't. They're not a fasting animal. Yeah.
Just to make sure they have access when you have chicks. So the chicks are tiny. They're about as small as the little dinosaur on this card, right?
Yeah, they're
very
when they
tiny.
hatch, they're the size of their egg, which is not very big. But they double in size every week, so they grow very fast.
Yeah,
if we allow they're growing their feathers in very fast too.
They double every week, so if we allowed these quail to grow fully for 1 year and a week, they'd be the size of the entire universe. Exponentially.
So they're finished growing in about 10 weeks. They slow down in growth. In about 5 weeks, the amount of growth that they're doing each week is less, but they're still growing.
Yeah, but the important thing is making sure they have the high protein food available for that growth period. So, real quick about food, okay? You're in control of mimicking what they're going to be doing in nature, and you're trying to do it to the best of your ability. It's not going to ever be perfect, okay? Birds in wild, they don't eat crushed mash. They're eating bugs and whatever they're foraging for, out in the natural environment. But, thankfully, we have knowledge, and you can get pretty decent quality feeds that are going to supply the nutrients they need. But that's your job for the birds. You got to supply them what they would have in their natural environment, or as close to it as you can, so they can facilitate their growth and become big, strong critters and reproduce for you and make eggs. If you're not taking care of them the first 8 weeks, they're going to be smaller, sickly. They may not even lay as many eggs as they're supposed to. Okay.
Yeah, so the hens, they can start laying eggs. They'll start popping out a couple as early as 6 weeks usually, and then from 6 to 8 weeks, then they'll become more consistent. So we do encourage at 6 weeks that you start mixing in a lower protein feed, a layer feed, with the grower feed.
Yeah.
That way, because it'll have the calcium that they need to strengthen those egg-laying muscles, and that'll help prevent prolapse. And then it'll also strengthen the eggshell. You may end up with shellless eggs without the calcium.
Less. Without a amount of calcium, the shell is lacking, or the egg is lacking a proper shell. It's like a gel ball.
Yeah, it's the membrane with everything in it.
Yeah.
But so then you'll just start mixing it and feed that as you transition them. Once they're 10 weeks old, then they can fully be on that layer feed.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter if it's quail or chicken or whatever you're feeding. You may want to check out your local feed mills if you have one near you to save money. They're not pretty bags. It's not like at the big tractor stores with smiling chickens and nice packaging. Check out the big feed mills where you can buy bulk amounts of feed at a lower price. Okay, because we're about trying to be efficient, so you want to save if you can.
And then the feed is more likely to be fresher.
Fresher, yeah.
The box stores that feed, it's months and months old, and ideally, 3 months feed should be eaten, if not sooner. So
if it's cracked, most of this food is either mashed or pelleted or something like that. So yeah, it does oxidize and it doesn't last very long. Okay, it's like, think about your own food. Are you just going to sit it out on the counter? And if you do, is it going to be fresh in 3 weeks or 3 months? It's the same thing.
Yeah.
If you set a watermelon out for a month, it's fine. It's got a housing, right?
So whole grains, they'll last for, years.
Yeah, they'll last
the
a long
freshness
time.
would be different, but
Yeah,
because it's like a
years.
seed.
They'll last for years, most of the whole grains, unless they're cooked or processed.
As long as they're stored properly.
Yeah.
But yeah, the nutritional content of the ingredients in a feed that's cracked open or pelletized
It starts to deteriorate.
Yeah.
Oxygen and heat. So that's feed, and that's not something you have to worry about with quail. I mean, you're going to get what you can, local feed mill if you can. If not, whatever. We use the Purina grower sometimes. So
Game bird feed.
just be aware of the feed. They need it constantly, and the little babies need the high protein. Again, in the comments or whatever, the description, they have a link to our Q&A. It tells you all this stuff. All right? Breeding and reproduction. I'm going to go over that quickly because we did a bunch of, we did a breeding one on here, I think, or on the Facebook. We did a
recent video.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So breeding, we did like for eggs and meat and size production. So breeding and reproduction, it's two different things. So reproducing is easy. It's where you just hatch eggs. Breeding is a little more involved because you're being specific and intentional with an expectation of an outcome. If you're raising quail, you're going to want to consider breeding them or at least reproducing them in the future. How long does the laying hen lay efficiently? About 2 years, 18 months to 2 years?
Efficiently, I would say a year and a half.
Year and a half. So,
she's still going to be laying, should still be laying by age 2, but it'll be less.
Yeah.
Because their entire life is about
Fast.
being rapid. And they may live, if you were to keep them as pets, they may live, a couple more years, maybe like up to 4 years old, but they'll end up with like organ failure or something like that. So they're not really meant to be long-term, year-wise.
They're prey animals.
Yeah.
They live out in the woods, they forage, they get eaten.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but they don't lay for many years. 18 months, you're going to have them laying. So you're going to consider breeding them. Oh, hello there, viewer who dropped in. If you have a question, pop it in the bottom.
Which, by the way, that is actually very similar to the high production egg-laying chicken breeds.
Yeah.
It's usually they're being replaced, by 2 years. At least by 2 years, they're replaced with younger ones. The ones specifically bred for high egg production, because it's a lot of. that takes a lot of energy for them to do.
Non-stop work.
And then there are other breeds like the black Australorp where they'll keep laying their eggs past 2 years pretty well.
Staying healthy. All right. So breeding and reproduction. We're getting about a year and a half, almost 2 years of solid 300 plus egg production out of the hens, and then they're going to decrease. And I'm thinking, I still want a lot of eggs. Maybe I want more eggs. Well, I gotta reproduce my hens, so I'm going to hatch them. Breeding and reproduction, just to circle back to that. Am I reproducing them? Yeah, I'm just going to reproduce them. So I'm collecting eggs, putting them in an incubator, and hatching them. Now, if I'm breeding them, all right, that means I'm looking for traits. Right?
Yeah,
We're trying to get traits to evolve
the most
or
simple,
develop. Or retain,
focus.
just retain a good trait.
The most simple focus would be size of the quail, weighing them, and selecting your largest quails. But generally, with the guidelines of staying just under 16 ounces. Is that right? Yeah. 16 ounces.
The jumbo quail.
Just under a pound. Because that's what they're bred for, that size for the production of the eggs and the meat. If you start selecting bigger birds, they're not going to live as long. They're not going to lay as many eggs because it takes a lot more energy for them to maintain their body. So that's the ideal size. And then you'll probably be thinking about egg sizes. You would collect eggs, the sized eggs that you like the most, and then only hatch those. So that's the most basic.
Yeah, and like the breeding too, guys. Like I said at the beginning of this video, if you're trying to make some extra side money, depending where you are, you can definitely raise these animals, hatch them. They're very easy to hatch, and start selling your quail to recoup whatever you're spending, or maybe even make a profit if you're doing it properly. So you're having a lot of these quails. You can, especially now, because there is a demand for self-sufficiency. There's demand for even the people who live in cities. They want to be able to produce their own food. So there is a demand for this. And our job is to communicate that to people who are not savvy. They don't have this information. So, hey, let me give you this information, education, and for somebody, they're going to determine, oh, you know what? That's exactly what I was looking for. I just didn't know it existed. All right. So this thing exists, which satisfies a need in the marketplace for you guys. We're talking about making some extra money. Or
Yeah, often people will buy the hens or sexed females. People definitely will want to buy them.
because they want eggs.
Yeah, and a note on breeding. We discussed females, hens. The roosters, it is important if you're going to be using them for breeding at any point, to make sure to plan to replace him by about 6 months. The longest, I would say, a year. They start to get lazy and then don't do their job anymore by around 6 months. Sometimes there's some real energetic males in there and they'll keep going past 6 months, but it's good to make sure you're paying attention to their age if you want to maintain fertile eggs.
Very good. Bravo. That's correct. So again, for breeding or reproduction, males become a little less useful at 6 months.
Yeah.
So you're going to replace them. And you can do that at home. You just hatch them yourself. Within 3 weeks after they hatch, you'll be able to tell whether you have a male or female just by their color pattern. Male is orange, and a female is speckles. So they're very easy to tell. So you know who your male is, and you can raise them out, and they'll be ready to breed again at 8 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, as early as 6 weeks if they have enough sunlight, which promotes their hormones. But 8 weeks for sure.
Okay, so we discussed the breeding and reproduction. Like I said, this is a very general kind of fly through. The reason we do this again is to get questions. So if you guys have questions before, during, or after these things, just put them into the comments. We get back to you. Like I see stuff pop up 2 or 3 days later, and I'll get to it. So if you're listening to this in your kitchen or whatever doing breakfast, there you go. Leave me a comment. I'll get back to it as soon as it pops up. Anyway, so breeding and reproduction. We're cool. It's a very general thing. We have in-depth videos over at the Facebook. And I think we did one recently here. So now we're going to move on to health and disease management. Health and disease management. Well, we discussed disease. The number one way to prevent disease is keep them from being filthy. Okay, clean them out.
Yeah.
And their system, right? Like, tell them about versus chicken, their tiny, overwhelmable system.
Yeah, so the quail, they're pretty hardy. If they get injured,
Physical injury.
Because of their fast metabolism, they actually...
Like Wolverine. They heat, they'll heal quick.
Their blood will clot quickly. They'll scab over quickly. It's amazing how fast they heal.
You'll think these animals are dead.
Or they might look
really ripped up.
Horrendous, yeah.
Just treat them antiseptic and separate them so they don't get infection, and they heal up with physical injury.
But internally, they are not so hardy. So chickens, for example, they're bigger birds, so their bodies can handle.
And they're constantly exposed to organisms.
Yeah, they're always pecking the ground, eating whatever. Even if you're feeding them in a bowl, they're still then going to go peck the ground and eat stuff, eat rocks and bugs. So they are always exposed to organisms, bacteria, parasites. Generally, chickens actually have a certain amount of parasites in them, almost like all year round, like during their lifetime. Just the parasites don't overrun their systems if they're a healthy animal. And then if the bird is ever stressed for some reason for a period of time, then their immune system can be compromised, and then the parasites can then overrun their body and their health, and then that's when it becomes an issue. But the quail, they're so tiny, they're much smaller compared to a chicken, and it's very fast. If they become ill from any kind of bacteria or organism or anything, it's just really, really fast, and they can perish really, like, kind of quick.
Yeah.
So sometimes you might realize, oh, something's up with my quail, if they're exposed to something, and then as you're trying to figure out, it might take a couple days to figure out what's going on, and then it might just end up being too late.
Yeah, a common question we get is, can I keep the quail with the chickens? You can, but I wouldn't, okay? Because there's a higher probability that you could get a contagion, cross-contaminate, and croak out. And you don't want that. You don't want you to come in and people do keep them together, but
The biggest,
it's like not, do you wear a seatbelt or not? Well,
a common issue with any animal that's on the ground is coccidiosis, and that's a parasitic type thing, and it's just from like having dirty environment and manure, not being sanitized or clean enough. It doesn't have to be like perfect, but any animal really can be exposed to that. And then the quail, they can be difficult to bounce back if you're able to catch it in time and treat them. So yeah, pretty much you want to keep, if you have them on the ground in that type of type of housing, like an aviary, you want to have your bedding system, your deep litter system figured out and managed. Usually it's several inches of untreated mulch or something like that, and then you tend to that type of bedding. The other thing with illness would be respiratory illness. That's common with birds of any kind. Respiratory illness, and birds can get some sort of, like, they can start sneezing or something just from like overly being stressed. So you just want to, make sure they're overall, being tended to and not
at the beginning
stressed.
of this, or in the middle, we were talking about the ventilation.
Yeah,
For preventing respiratory illness with ventilation is very important.
And an important thing too, a lot of people, including ourselves, like to give them like a sand bath area because they just really enjoy. It's good for their mental health to have the sand bath, but it's important to make sure it's not like overly dusty. Some people like to add the diatomaceous earth to the sand, and we actually wouldn't recommend that because when they kick it up, then it'll become powdery and in the air, and if they inhale that can damage their, and it's bad for you also to breathe, damage their lungs and cause illness. Sometimes they get like runny eyes or runny nose or just overall like lethargic. So yeah, it's health really comes down to mostly the management of their environment and just watching them.
Yeah, so keep it clean.
Yeah.
Sum it up with keep it clean, basically. But there's tons of information, education on illnesses. I don't want to overwhelm you guys with it's a simple intro video about taking care of these critters and raising them for yourself. There's a ton of information about health and disease management for quail and what's common with them. But yeah, man, just keep them clean and keep the ventilation. Make sure they stay ventilated. They respirate tons and tons of water.
And make sure they're shaded. They're in a shaded area and covered from the elements.
Like the respiratory illness, because they're breathing out so much water, right? Fluid or vaporized water, right? Well, bacteria love warmth.
Damp.
And water, where it's warm and where it's damp. And quail have a very high metabolism. They're very warm, and you breathe a lot of water out. So it's a perfect environment. So you just want to keep it ventilated and keep it clean. All right. Now, keeping it clean, I don't want you to get paranoid about that because everybody's looking for why shouldn't they do something. Oh, I got to clean it that much? It's got to be sparkling? No.
No.
Just don't have piles of crap festering everywhere. Dead birds rotting in the corner. Just rotting eggs over in
Have a routine to tend to. Having the flooring with trays so that the manure can go through. And you might think, why would I need trays? You just have to make sure predators can't get up underneath the cage, because if they're able to get right to the wire, if a predator could, like a fox or a dog or a raccoon, could get their mouth and they can get their teeth right up to the wire, they can grab a foot and pull it down through.
Yeah, the way we have our cages set up, we have trays underneath to pull out and clean. However, the trays are not way far below the hutch floor. They're like maybe an inch or half an inch away from that hutch floor, not very far, maybe an inch. So there's no space that a weasel or rat can get under there and do damage.
And easily, grab them. You just have to make sure that the floor structure is properly supported so that the weight of the birds don't end up making the wire of your flooring like dip into the tray. And you could also, rig up like electric wire or something if you don't want to do trays. But people, for the sand bath area, just make sure people like to, you could use like a kitty litter scooper or something just to tend to that, or like a rake.
We have an actual chat question.
Yeah.
We're using the iPhone. This is not like tip-top stuff, but let me see here. Live chat messages. I want to build an aviary in my yard, but it would be on a slope. Do you have any suggestions for preventative measures when it comes to flash flooding and heavy rain? Ooh, that's a really good question. So I'm assuming it's going to be roofed, or you're going to have some kind of, what do you call it?
Like a shelter.
Yeah, shelter for the creatures. So, so we get a lot of rain here, and we're at the bottom of a hill, and we have a lot of, I wouldn't say floody conditions, but we do get floods down here. Anywho, so ours, we're not in an aviary. We keep ours hutched. That's going to be, you don't want to have the animals getting injured or overwhelmed by, they can handle the rain fine, like if it's running, but if it's going to drown them, and clogging it up with it, bringing down a lot of debris with it as well, washing potential other
you want to make sure that your bedding, also your deep litter system, isn't getting washed away. So you will have to figure out if there's some sort of like rain guard or something that you'd want to put on the one side of your aviary to block or direct the water.
I'm just thinking, she says she wants to build it on a slope. I'm just taking a look.
Yeah, and
at that note again.
Something you could do is use, a quick idea. There's many different things you could probably do, but you could take something like maybe like a PVC piping, cut it in half, like a pretty, wide one, cut it in half, and have it so that it's, like that on the one side.
So I used to do landscaping
and then
back
could direct the water.
in the old days, and now this is a common problem: flood mitigation and mitigating water runoff. You may want to just do a survey of your yard, personal survey. Don't go pay $1 million, but survey. Take a look where the rain runoff is going, and if you need to, maybe install a swale, which is a pile of dirt, basically like a guardrail for the rainwater, so you can divert it if it's that important and it's that big of an issue, for sure.
It would be good to make sure that the water isn't rushing in there, because even if the bedding stays okay, like Christopher mentioned, if you have pathogens or bacteria or something that gets washed in or comes in, from the yard somewhere
maybe
else.
The guy up the hill's raising a possum farm. They have all the possum bacteria washing down there. We don't like that. So, take a look, see if you can put a swale in, or if there's something else you can do to mitigate heavy rains. Water's fine, but
I imagine you can make it work.
Wash away kind of level rain is going to be a problem either way. But I would look into the swale idea and take a look at your rain runoff. The guy up the hill has his trash cans above where my aviary will be.
So just figure out how to mitigate water, direct the water around or away or block from your
trash cans aren't sanitary. I wouldn't be doing surgery in the trash can. I wouldn't have the. It sucks, but it's something to take a look at. I would consider the swale. I don't know what your yard looks like, but here, like if we had that problem, I'd be like, okay, I'm either digging a ditch or building a hill.
And also with it being on a hill, the quail, they will, they'll scratch around and they'll move the bedding or the bedding around, but they're not as aggressive, I would say, as chickens. Chickens are like, I'm gonna, move 2 inches of this dirt and get down there and see what's underneath me. And because we have a sloped chicken run for one of our pens, and over time they'll move whatever bedding we put in there all the way to the other end of the pen. So it should be okay just with quail activity.
And depending on the aviary, I'm not telling you what to do, but if you have an internal hutch or something like a safety zone for the birds, and a huge storm's coming, if you can transfer them. I don't know where you live. Like where we live, it's summertime, we'll get big storms, but we know when they're coming. And with our birds, we'll rush out and put them away or do whatever needs to be done before the rains. It's not convenient, but it's easy enough. It's, again,
but she
individual.
could, or they could cover it cover it with some sort of material
Yeah.
to keep it.
It's hard to say without being there, but yeah, definitely
Anyway.
disease runoff from the trash guy, not good. Washing away of the bedding, not good. So,
But mitigate it. There's
if you can. All right.
Yeah.
So, rolling along, we're going to talk about, I'm going to finish up with egg production and management of egg production. Because that's why the majority of people are raising these jumbo quail is for food, and usually it's eggs. So we want to have high egg production. So new people out there, any kind of poultry in the wintertime, it's getting darker this time of year. And one of the things for continual egg production is the supplemental lighting. Okay, when the sun starts going down, they get less than 16 hours, 14 hours?
Yeah, if they're getting less than 14, they should have any egg laying bird. They're gonna need between 14 and 18 hours consistently to keep up egg production. Without that amount of lighting, then it's gonna affect their hormone levels, and which then they'll just stop laying.
Yeah, it's not kind of intuitive to the human.
Yeah.
But yeah, they peter out once it gets into fall time, and you're going to want to add supplemental lighting. Now the question you hear often is, well, I don't want my birds overworking with supplemental lighting, and that's fine, totally understandable. But you're not overworking the bird. The bird's designed to lay eggs all year round, and I always say, look at if they lived at the equator, they'd be laying eggs all year round.
And a bird is, a female, anything that's producing eggs, they're born with the amount of eggs they're going to produce throughout their lifetime. So it's not like they're going to be producing more than what they're capable of producing. But when you're talking about jumbo quail in particular, compared to maybe a chicken breed that isn't focused on egg production, because the egg production birds, chickens, their lifespan of laying eggs is shorter than other breeds. So if you're thinking about the jumbo quail, everything about them is rapid. So you're not going to have them laying really beyond 2 years. So if you're not giving them lighting, if you're having them for specifically the production of the eggs,
your aviary, maybe it's just a natural thing and you don't want to worry about it. Not a big deal.
It's just something to consider. People like them for pets.
And the biological reason, so the reason they're laying eggs and hatching eggs is to have little baby animals, right? And in the wintertime with no light, there's no foliage, there's no bugs, and there's no reason to be having baby birds because they'll starve. They'll starve and die. So the body shuts down and says, whoa, I'm not raising kids. Look what's going on. There's nothing to eat. So they shut down. And when spring comes, right, what happens in the spring? You hear tweeting everywhere.
Yeah.
There's food again. The food
babies
cycle
everywhere.
is back, and you can start raising young. So their body is in tune with the seasons.
Yeah.
All right, no matter where they live. They live down south. They can lay their eggs, and they're going to be fine. I think that's a major issue with egg production. We've seen a lot of that over the last years. Like, I think my chickens are all sick. They just stopped laying eggs. I was like, oh, well, it's October.
Yeah, and
this is why.
Yeah, so once the light starts changing, you will want, if you are going to add light, you will want to get that light strip in there. It's great to put it on a timer. If no light is provided, or if it's provided too late and they do stop, then they'll likely do a heavy molt, where they are flushing out their old feathers and they're growing new feathers in, and takes a lot of energy, so they will likely stop laying eggs while they're doing that. If you end up adding lighting to your cage while they're molting heavily, it's likely they still won't really start laying much until they're finished with the molt, and it could take a little time to complete that. If you add the light before they do a heavy molt, they'll still molt, but it'll be lighter. It'll be a lighter molt, and they'll still keep laying their eggs while they're doing it.
M-O-L-T? It's no U, right? Molt.
Yeah, I've seen both, but I think
it's a new word. People may not be familiar with it. So if you have a bird and it looks like something exploded and there's feathers everywhere, they're probably molting.
The quail actually keep a lot of feathers on them, even though they lose a ton of them. But like chickens, they look like naked ladies. They look horrible.
Pretty hideous.
Yeah.
So lighting. The other major issue with egg production that people have is stressors, mainly like predators. Something coming around. like a raccoon, a possum or something, fox,
Scaring
at night,
them.
scaring the quail. Well,
Or even a stressor could be moving your quail from cage to cage. That's a stressor.
yeah, say you're doing a deep clean or something or whatever. You're repairing something and you take the quail out to a new environment, you put them back in their old environment, they may stop laying for a little bit. But yeah, the predators and the stressors, they can, instigate the bird to cease laying for a little while. Particularly if the predator is coming back intermittently at nighttime. The birds do get used to stressors. So like if you have a dog or cat or something that's going around the cage, the birds will acclimate to it. But if it's something seasonal and all of a sudden the raccoon family sniffs and they start scaring the birds, they may just stop laying eggs and you're wondering why. It might be the predators. We have night cameras out there, so if something goofy's happening, we'll see them trying to eat all our animals. But cages are predator proofed, so nobody gets eaten.
So sometimes the raccoons will climb on top of the cages, which that obviously would scare them.
Stresses them.
Yeah.
And the other thing about predators, to prevent them too, be careful with feed droppage. Young person discussing your aviary. Like if you have food around the aviary that's getting out everywhere, especially with aviaries, sometimes people don't consider they got to have them dug into the ground a little because rats or other animals will dig
Yeah, they will.
underneath a cage sitting on top. So you want to have either a covered bottom, okay, so things can, you know what I mean, like a cage bottom, or you want to have the bottom of the aviary into the earth.
And then you could even do an apron of maybe like a foot or so of wire on the side, and you can put mulch on it or something, so that's they can't dig.
Yeah, if it's a stationary aviary, if it's stationary, you want to have it secured into the earth to a depth to keep digging animals from getting in there. 1/4-inch hair growth cloth will be covering the entire bottom, at least that's planned. Okay, cool. Yeah, nothing's getting in there.
Because that'll keep even mice out.
Yeah, it'll keep everything out. So you should be fine with that. That's great. Yeah. That's a huge issue. People put all this time and effort and they care about the animals, and then they come out one morning and everybody's eaten up. It's really heartbreaking.
Or just if there is feed waste that's on the ground, and you see maybe not in the cage, but you see a rat or a mouse, very likely if you're seeing it, there's going to be friends. And you don't, that's not good for your animals to have that around. But also at wintertime, these rodents will start looking at your house and figuring out how to get into your house because it's warm inside. So you want to make sure you're preventing rodents.
Yeah, it's a 2-tier system. You first invite the animal or the rodents with the quail food, and then you get the rodents to want to come in their house because it starts getting cold. So yeah, but you should be cool with the 1/4-inch, man. That's good.
Yeah.
I talked to somebody recently. I forget. Anyway, they had a system, and the creatures were getting into the aviary under the cage. It's like, oh no,
that's not good. Yeah.
Stuff that we take for granted. It wouldn't even occur to me. That's not something to do. But for a lot of people, it's they're inexperienced. It's not like they're stupid or anything. It's just you need experience to know this stuff.
And there's predators people aren't even aware of. Like a lot of people will be like, oh, we don't have any mink. But actually, like, there's a lot of mink. You just don't see them. Or we don't have any foxes or raccoons. We live in the suburbs or whatever, or the city. But there's actually quite a lot in there. And they tend to be more aggressive because there's more competition within the smaller space, having available food from humans.
Yep. I guess the last thing I want to discuss with egg production. Egg production is, again, going back to making sure they have the appropriate food and regular access to food and access to water at all times, clean water. Next week, I'm going to be doing an interesting education on the digestive system of chickens. And quail are very, very similar. Poultry are similar, the way their digestive tracts work. But it's imperative that they have access to water when they're eating. It's very important. So if you ever look at a feed, it'll say access to clean water at all times. There's a reason for this. You'll have to find out when you tune in. So I don't want to go into the whole thing right now. But yeah, so make sure they have their feed and water at all times. And another thing I had in here was fluctuation, temperature fluctuation. Not extreme temperatures. They're good with extreme temperatures. Hot temperatures, they're fine. They're going to lay. They'll be breathing a lot more and drinking a lot more water, but they're fine. Cold temperatures, they're fine. They're going to be huddled up more, okay? And they're not going to be as active, moving around, but they're still fine and they're still going to be laying eggs. It's the extreme fluctuations of temperatures from one to the other. Maybe you're in a shaded valley area or something like this and it's very cold, you know, depending where you are in the country. And it's very cold at night, like a desert, and then scalding hot in the day. This may be contributing to the production of their eggs. So you may want to look at that and see if you can change the shade up or the way the housing is being.
Yeah, and seasonal weather changes, you'll want to adjust if needed. Create any wind barriers for cold winds. Or just make sure they have plenty of shade during the summertime. That they should not ever be in direct sunlight where they would heat up. It's okay for them to get sunlight, you know, through the sides because they do need vitamin D. You know, it's good for them to have access to sunlight. But you don't want them to heat up. And
Yeah, there's no good. Anyway, they're very easy critters. I think that's going to about do it. I'm going to give some more speeches about the business side of things in case anybody was curious about actually selling their critters. But yeah, they're very easy to keep, maintain, reproduce. And for me personally, like my thing with this is I know they're producing a super healthy food source. Their meat is very healthy. It's lean, has a lot of nutrients into it. And the eggs are extremely healthy and very good for you. Okay, dude? I'm old and I like no cholesterol, perfectly healthy. I eat the eggs all the time. I don't eat the store eggs. But you know, they're really good for you. And it's just nice to have healthy, delicious food that you made at home. You give to family members and they get these little eggs. They're like, oh, wow. The Americans, you know, people living here in the U.S., most people have never been exposed to little quail eggs, so it's kind of like a novelty or it's neat. Overseas, everybody eats them all over the place, all over the world.
Yeah.
But it's neat.
And you might think, you know, the size isn't so big, the eggs, but they lay so many eggs that you'll end up, they'll be piling on your counter or piling in your fridge, wherever you have them. You're gonna be giving them away because they just lay a lot of eggs, and it's so rewarding, really, because it's, you know, you're focused, intentional work to be healthy and have an animal that you're taking care of. You know it's healthy, you know it's happy, and it's producing eggs for you and your family. It's very satisfying.
Speaking of family, congratulations everybody, because your kids went back to school this week, or they're going back next week. That's
soon.
Yeah, so it's kind of a crazy time of year for a lot of people. So good luck with school this year if your kids are going back. I think that does it. Like I said, I could go in depth about the whole profiteering off of your quail thing.
Yeah, I think that's another topic.
Yeah, I could do an in-depth about it, but do you need to split?
I do. Yes.
She's going to split. I'm going to say goodbye. You can say goodbye.
Well,
I'm going to finish.
Are you going to go for a little while?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, it was great being here tonight.
She's doing chickens outside.
Yeah, I have birds that need to be physically picked up and put away so the raccoons don't get them. So it was a pleasure being here with everybody. I hope that you enjoyed it, and yeah, I'll see you next time. Have a good night. Bye.
Bye, wife.
See ya.
I'll see you, hon. Okay. Hi, friends. If you're still there, I'm going to go briefly into the whole profiting off of our quail. So what happened with us? Totally new to quail in 2020 during Corona apocalypse. Everything shut down. We moved and we came to our little homestead house out here in southern Pennsylvania. It's beautiful out here, by the way. There's mountains and rivers everywhere. So we were deciding, what are we going to do? Well, what did the market say? We noticed people needed housing, cheap housing. Food was obviously getting more expensive now. Energy was costing more, and you know, it's farmer country. It's like, okay, well, let's look into the food development issue, the food development. And Angela did the research, and she was looking at quail. I was like, quail, little birds. We had them as kids. I don't really remember much about them. But this is 2020, so we gained all this information, went on a huge learning spree, like put a ton of effort and energy into learning about the animals. So So what does it have to do with business? So if you're doing anything, you need to know what you're doing, be proficient at it and have knowledge about it so you can improve the quality of your product and service and so you can educate other people. That's actually a huge value, especially with stuff like this. This is almost hyper local, at least for us it is, because we're dealing with a lot of chicks, little babies. And so we deal with the local area. So it's good that, I feel confident and, oh, hey, Jerry, Joey, Joe over there who we just helped, I know what we're giving him is tip-top quality stuff. And if he has any problems, he's going to give me a call. All right. So how do we go about going from knowing nothing to developing a product? This is an easy thing to do. Okay. But like anything, it requires some dedication to become proficient and to produce something of quality. And it requires organizational skills. I'm not going to go too huge and in-depth into all that stuff. But it requires behavioral change too. So a lot of the stuff you might be used to doing, procrastinating, slacking off, half jobs here and there, you're going to have a business mindset, set goals and all that good stuff, which we had to do and which we did. And we're consistent, right? Remaining consistent with that. It doesn't matter what your product or service is. It's totally irrelevant. You need to be, or it is advisable that one would remain consistent and persistent in the pursuit of the betterment of his product and or service, right? So that's what we did with these quail. That was it. Come up with a unique name, which is, I guess they call branding yourself, and putting that out there for the public to see, oh, these people have an idea and know what they're doing. I know them or I trust them because I've seen their information and I know people who've used their products. So I'm going to engage with them. And that's basically, in a very brief nutshell, what we did. Now, I did a whole class on profiting at a homestead. It doesn't matter what you're selling, okay? It could be anything or what your product or your service, doesn't matter what it is. There are some basic rules you need to follow for your thing to thrive and grow. All right. You can't just sit there and slack off, or it's an organizational thing. I'm ADHD kind of brain. I'm all over the place, but I had to learn to be more organized and let the hyperactive part of my brain be creative, but then stifle it so I could also be organized, which was difficult, still difficult, right? So, not to ramble on here, but if you guys are looking to, pull profit or make some money or just recoup and break even with your quail, it's totally possible. Know your market, know what your value is, know who your audience is, and present your product to them and communicate it clearly so they understand your message. So this is my value, XYZ, and I'm going to communicate it to the receiving audience so they understand the value as I see it. Right? It's all about communicating. So they receive my message and they understand the value that I'm providing. And if it interests them, I'm not selling them anything. It's their free will, their decision to engage in that product or service. With this stuff, I know the value of it. And I really try to present the people who we deal with what the value is for them. A lot of them already know because we've been doing this for a while. But for new people, and if they're curious, I'm like, yeah, here is like what we're discussing in this video. Easy to produce food at home, clean food, a reproducible animal, something that grows very fast, something that's great for the kids to involve themselves with. Where's my kids book? Or the little kids book for the children. It's something that I can communicate these values, the values I know and that I'm trying to communicate to people is easy. I know what I have to offer and what this has to offer to them. And I'm trying to make this statement very broad and general because it should apply to anything, not just quail, but whatever it is. I know the value, I'm communicating the value. Receiver may want it, the marketplace may dictate that value is in need or in demand. So law of economics kicks in. Ta-da! There you go. Quail business. But we can talk more in depth about that, and I can put together, and I have an organized presentation on how to go from zero to having your little quail business functioning, depending on your goals and what level you want to get to. So if that's of interest, let me know. If you guys are watching this all the way to the end, Thank you very much. It's a whole hour. If you have any requests for the future, please let me know. Put them down in the comments. We have lots of experience now and are happy to share our knowledge. Next week, August 31st, I think, 2023, I'll be doing a live video about the digestive tract of the poultry, of the chickens, and why they're very unique. Chicken, quail, duck, they have very similar digestive tract. What's unique about them, the parts that you might not be familiar with or have a general idea, and what those functions are. Until next time, thanks for stopping in, guys. Hope to see you at the next one. And that'll do it for today.